What is going on, YouTube? My name is Horror Romancer, and today I'm going to be reading some of the scariest but true reported paranormal encounters from police officers. These stories all come from police1.com, and if you guys do enjoy this video, go ahead and drop a like down below and subscribe to my YouTube channel to help me out in the future. Let's get right into it. A different kind of evil. Several years ago, I took a 911 call for a family reporting their teenage daughter was possessed. They claimed no possibility of drugs or a history of mental health issues, which I of course didn't believe for a second. Family members were holding her down and I could hear two people screaming at each other in the background. I asked the caller to tell whoever was yelling at her to stop. The caller said, "It's her." I responded that I knew it was her, but whoever was yelling at her at the same time to stop. The caller again said, "It's her," both voices. I kid you not, it was the creepiest thing I've ever heard. I've been doing this for 25 years and I've heard many things. I know of a man's inhumanity and the horrible things people do to each other, but this was a different kind of evil. I was clearly hearing a young girl screaming at the same time an adult male was yelling. I couldn't understand either language, but they were both clearly two different voices. The family swore both voices were coming from her at the same time. It made my skin crawl. The lieutenant listened to the tape later and he looked at me and said, "Do you ever wonder?" Yes I do. Cell number 1 is empty. I've seen a lot of things in my career, things that would make a citizen doubt my sanity. From being dispatched to chase a UFO to responding to calls of ghosts. But the most unusual thing that happened to me was witnessed by several officers and a dispatcher. One evening I had brought in a guy for domestic violence, and as he was a bit rowdy, I was joined in booking by the sergeant and another patrolman. I'm in the process of booking Mr. Tough Guy when I glanced into cell number 1. There was a guy in there, short haircut, glasses, and a white t-shirt, just staring at us. I ignored him because I didn't want him to start banging on the window demanding a phone call or something. So I finished the booking process and escort Mr. Tough Guy to his cell, walking past cell number 1. The guy in the cell just stood there, never saying a word or moving. We all then leave booking and go about our business. Sometime later, Sergeant asks me to check the paperwork for the prisoners to see if any were ready to transport to the county jail. I grab the paperwork and go into booking to do a head count. Cell number 1 is empty. I panic and tell the sergeant, who also panics, and he and I begin to make phone calls to the detectives to see if they had moved the guy or had released him or something. They all say they didn't go into booking at all. I then checked the computer and paperwork again, and the head count was accurate. No one had been placed in cell number 1. We go to the dispatch office to check the surveillance video for booking. We rewind the footage to where I can be seen booking the prisoner. We fast forward to the point in the video where we all walk out. As soon as we walk past the door, the guy in number 1 blinks out of existence. We were all freaked out by the occurrence, believe you me. When we tried to transfer the video to DVD and USB drive, the guy in the cell did not appear. We still hear and see stuff every now and then, and the prisoners in the detox tank can be seen talking to someone in the direction of cell number 1, even though it appears empty. To this day, I'm wary of going into booking alone. Welfare check. Answered a welfare check call one night late, between 0230 and 0300 on an elderly woman who had lived next door to the caller and had not been seen for some time. This night we were having a bad thunderstorm without the rain. I get to the complainant's house to speak to her, wondering why she called at this time. She tells me the lady next door is in her 90s, lives alone, and she has not seen her in weeks. She explained that she has called, went over, and knocked on the door, but the lady will not answer. I start thinking she is probably deceased and has been for some time. The car has a 3-inch layer of dust on it, the mail is piling up, and no lights are on. First I walked to the side door and knocked on the door with my flashlight. Knocking loud enough, an elderly person with some hearing should hear it. After a few minutes of no response, I turn around and walk to the backyard looking out the windows and find everything okay. The complainant is with me and is saying she doesn't know of any relatives of the lady. I'm sure by now that she is probably deceased. I walk to the front of the house and notice that her blinds are up on the front windows and I can see a glow from inside. I am, however, not tall enough to look inside the windows, which are probably 7 feet off the ground. The complainant runs next door and grabs a bucket for me to stand on. I get on the bucket and bingo, I can see the living room. The glow is from the TV, which was on blue screen and is bright enough I didn't need my flashlight to see in. I looked first at the door to make sure she had not fallen there. Couch, recliner, everything was empty. The telephone home base was blinking red with missed calls and voicemails. From the living room was a hallway that was dark and I couldn't see down. Using my flashlight I could only see an open door down the hall. Still no signs of life. I turned around and told the complainant that everything looked okay and nothing was disturbed. I turned back around and an elderly woman is looking back at me with her face right up next to the glass. I couldn't breathe. It felt as if I had been hit in the chest by a bat. I fell backward and off the bucket. I hit the ground and the complainant rushed to me. I pushed her off as she was trying to help me up and I ran back up to the bucket. My heart was pounding, but I had to see. Instinct had my hand on my gun, the other was up on the window. I looked back inside and I saw a frail elderly woman standing in the hallway wearing a long nightgown with her back to me. She turned her head to the side and looked at me out of the corner of her eye, and slowly walked out of view and down the dark hallway. That unnerved me. I got down and looked at the complainant who was standing there with a puzzled look on her face. All I could say was, I saw her. By now the wind had picked up and it began to rain. I began to walk back to my car by the road and I turned back to the complainant and said, "Don't come back here." I got into the car and drove to the PD. I never found out about the lady who lived there. The complainant didn't call back and the house now has different tenants inside. Some things are better left alone. No scent. Over 20 years ago, I took an alarm call at the PTA building across the street from a courthouse in Austin, Texas. The alarm had already gone quiet when I showed up with a senior officer. We found an unsecured door slightly open on the east side, so he posted me there while he finished the perimeter and other officers arrived. I was staring right at the door when the alarm activated again and the door slammed shut in my face, loudly. The senior officer ran back to my position and asked why I closed the door. I told him I didn't. We called for K9 and the dog arrived shortly. I went in with the K9 to clear the building. We found nothing, but the entire time the dog was acting very hinky like someone was in the building, but he wasn't picking up a scent. We secured the building and a key holder showed up. He said, "Well, you know the place is haunted, right? There was a secretary who worked there for about 30 years, and after she died, she keeps showing up for work. Papers fly off the desks, the doors close, sightings, the works." We both told the key holder the next alarm call was all his. Clark Hall. I was working at a college that claims to be haunted, and my partner and I didn't believe any of it. We go into Clark Hall, which has classrooms, and I start propping doors open with desks. This is around 0200 hours. We already walked around through and made sure the building was empty. Only 2 stairwells, so a donut wasn't hard to do. We're on the 3rd floor. I finished my door and wedged the desk in between the door and the frame. When I finished, I shake it to make sure it's in there pretty secure. I go over to help my buddy with his door when behind me the door I was working on opens up and the chair-desk combo flings across the room and the doors slam. He takes off running, jumping, landing to landing. I still don't think he's ever gone in that building again. Burglary in progress. During the day I was called to a burglary in progress. The owner was in the kitchen and heard someone run upstairs to the 3rd floor. It was an old house and had wood stairs. I set up a perimeter around the house and I came up with the K9. Just as I gave K9 warning, a perimeter officer saw a hand pull a curtain back on the top floor and relayed the info to me. Thinking surely we would be making an apprehension with a K9, I sent my partner in. Long story short, nobody was found. Officer was 100% certain he saw what he saw. The homeowner was confident he heard the running up of 12 steps. Just saying hello. A couple of years back, I was patrolling around 0300 and 0400. I drive by a small airport in my jurisdiction that is in the middle of the woods, which has several hangars and one main office building. I drive by it a few times at night, as it has been burglarized in the past. On this particular night, I'm driving by and I hear an audible alarm sounding from inside. I was not dispatched and did not receive any other calls about it. I call it in and walk up to the building, which is completely dark and not occupied. Every point of entry is secure, so I'm now waiting on the key holder to let me in to clear the inside. I figure a loose door, the wind, something tripped the alarm. The key holder comes out with his wife in a couple of minutes and they open up the door for me. I cleared the entire office, garage, etc. Nothing is disturbed. The key holder is confused as the alarm is not a motion alarm, nor an alarm system. The key holder explains to me that the alarm is coming from a cash register that was open on the inside of the office. The cash register could only be opened by pressing a hidden button, which I'll say was extremely well hidden without going into too much detail. The only people who knew where the button was located was he, his wife, and his deceased father. He told me the cash register closes and locks, and without pressing the button, it couldn't possibly open. It was not an oversight either, as I had driven by several hours before and heard nothing. The money was not disturbed, however. The register was all the way opened. The key holder smiled and told me that his father had created and owned the airport before his passing away, and that airplanes and this place in particular were his passion and life's work. The key holder told me that he believes his father does things like this to bring his family to the airport just to say hello and make his presence known. I don't have any other explanation for it. All alone. I was the sergeant working overtime graveyard at a now demolished sub. It was my lunch break and I heard someone open the door at the other end of the sub and heard footsteps. I had the lights off in my office because the hall lights more than lit it up. I saw someone in the door, and when I turned to look, it was a shadow figure standing in the doorway, as if to say, "Hi, Sergeant." It wasn't something I saw out of the corner of my eye, and it was there for a couple of seconds, and then went on towards the lieutenant's office. Later, when I asked the guys if they ever experienced anything strange at the sub, they responded, "That's why we don't come back until the sun comes up." I found out about other experiences that others had had, and it was similar. I'm still a skeptic, but I can't explain what I saw. Good conversation. I was working at our jail, and while doing my watch tour, I was heading into medical and heard 2 people having a conversation and thought it was 2 inmates in a cell talking. I went to the first cell and no names on the door, so I didn't look in. I went to the next door and it had 1 name on it. I opened the hatch to look in and there was a guy in there. I didn't say anything at first to him, and as in closing his hatch, he asked me if I could move his neighbors over because he was alone and would like some company. I then went over to the previous door and checked in the window just in case someone didn't put the names on the floor. I looked in and nobody was in the cell. I went back to the guy in the other cell and I asked him if he had heard people talking, and he stated yes, they had been talking a lot. I informed him that there was nobody next door and got out of there pretty fast. The boy on the bench. Worked security in a med center after retirement. Opened the place one morning at 0500. As I passed an alcove, for an instant saw a boy about 9 years old. Barn hair, striped shirt, sitting on a bench, and then he was gone. Anyway, out of embarrassment, I never told a soul about it. I had 8 retired detectives working for me, and one day I was having a conversation with one of them. Very sheepishly, he asked me if I ever saw anything strange in the place when I opened in the morning. When I asked him why he said that, he saw a young boy wearing a striped shirt sitting on a bench, then he was gone. The same location where I saw the kid. Other things that had happened were coffee pots being knocked over and footsteps late at night when closing. Later found out that the med center was located adjacent to the most haunted cemetery at Staten Island. Alrighty guys, that is the end of this video. If you did enjoy, go ahead and help me out by dropping a like down below and hitting that subscribe button. There is more of these police reports to read as well, so if you want me to read the rest of them, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.